nature, electromagnetic fields, also known as EMF, are all around us. The sun radiates its light on everything, providing nourishing warmth and energy for life on Earth to flourish. The Earth and atmosphere produce magnetic fields that strengthen and tune our bodies. In fact, everything in nature produces an energy field, and these types of energy fields that we are constantly bathed in are what we call native EMF. Non-native EMFs that humans have been creating are not like native EMFs we find in nature. The signals are repetitive and contain a lot of incoherent noise which interferes with our electrochemical nature, and they've been found to have adverse effects on humans in regards to cellular communication, fertility, mood, cognitive function, sleep patterns, Krebs cycle, metabolism, and much more. We are physiochemical beings, but we're also electromagnetic beings who rely on our endogenous electrical signaling to thrive and be healthy.
I'm Tom Blue. I work in the fields of functional and integrative medicine, really on the commercial implementation of it. So I have a long history in setting up medical practices that do this sort of work, dating all the way back to the early 2000s, and graduated to commercializing sort of root cause focused medicine in different ways. So I've spent loads and loads of time in the functional and integrative medicine space, developing protocols and then implementing them. Discovered Blushield really randomly in talking to a guy that runs a large health plan in Arizona, and he had been researching it, and I had, it was at a time when I was, this is what, 2 or 3 years ago now, I guess, when I was, becoming increasingly conscious of this. And he says he's been looking at Blushield. So I went to the Blushield site, and, it kind of on impulse, really. It was a strange, and looking back on it, it was sort of strange. I just was like, I'm going to get one of these. And so, I ordered one, it came. I plug it in at my house. Now at my house, everybody is on the Oura Ring. The kids, my wife, everybody's on the Oura Ring, and we're all kind of, we follow it fairly closely. And one of the very interesting things that that was true in our household. My wife is probably the most health conscious of all of us, but her heart rate variability has always been kind of crappy, and and for reasons I could never really understand. And so anyway, we plug the Blushield device in, and I mean, almost overnight, her heart rate variability starts going up to literally where her average HRV has probably doubled and has sustained that ever since. And I mean, for anybody that's tried to adjust their, to increase their heart rate variability, it's not easy to get, 10 or 20%, but to double it is really quite something. And so, and I'd tried a whole variety of things. I mean, I'd got sheets that you plug into the wall, and and I mean, just a bunch of things. And and Frank, the funny thing was, my wife probably thought I was the craziest of anybody, even thinking about this. She was not. This was not something that she really had given any thought or concern to. But lo and behold, we plug this thing in, and she experiences this profound effect. I myself saw an increase, but it was more on the order of, I don't know, 15 or 20%, which was still fantastic as far as I was concerned. But I also had had this sort of strangely stiff neck, like not a crick in my neck, but just a weird stiffness for a few days, which in talking to you all, I gathered is a fairly common detoxification sort of effect that, that people might feel for a few days after. And so, both the positive as well as a short stint of, an odd stiffness feeling that, that I had, wasn't an injury and I hadn't had something like that before, made me think, man, this is really quite incredible. So anyway, at that point, I'm watching the Aura data, and I'm thinking, geez, you guys, you've done some phenomenal studies with animals, but I'm like, my gosh, with all these people now wearing Oura rings, it would make a tremendous amount of sense to demonstrate this at scale. So, reached out to you and then involved. When you all were enthusiastic about it, I got a couple of other folks involved that had some brilliant ideas about other, looking at DNA methylation and other markers of health and aging that would likely be impacted. And lo and behold, a couple of years later, here we are with the final product ready for publication. So yeah, that's how, it was basically my unbridled enthusiasm for a new product that had a profound impact in a very short time that caused me to just give you a call.
I am an epidemiologist by training, and I did my doctoral work in the interaction between nutrition, physical activity, and physical function among older adults. So it got me kind of thinking about synergies between different lifestyle and environmental modalities right out of the gate. Been on faculty at the University of Maryland School of Medicine for, 14 years now, and been at the Center for Integrated Medicine, which I've directed for the last 5 years. And during that time, I really branched out beyond nutrition into the whole gamut of what we do in integrative and functional lifestyle root cause medicine to look at, stress management, non-pharmacological pain modalities, a bunch of those kinds of things. But I've taken a real interest in environmental medicine in recent years. And that includes EMFs, which we're going to talk about today, which I feel like are one of the most underappreciated and under-recognized threats to human health that we face today. Well, non-native EMF, I really think is an underappreciated threat, and it presents a variety of different kinds of issues. And they vary from those who are what we call acutely electrohypersensitive. So these are the folks that they know when they're around EMFs, whether it's cell phone or wireless or magnetic fields, electric fields, because they feel it acutely. Many people have that experience, but don't necessarily recognize it, because many of the symptoms that people experience are these nondescript things like fatigue, brain fog, anxiety, headaches that are pretty common today. So there's those folks, and they're kind of the minority at this point in time. As we get more and more of these technologies, sadly, I think we're going to see more and more people that have these acute issues. But then we've got basically everybody else who is affected on a more chronic basis, because these EMFs are pervasive. The non-native EMFs are pervasive today, with some of the things I already mentioned, but smart devices, all over the place. We see more and more sources of radio frequency in particular. These are what you find in the wireless technologies. So for all of us, we see excessive oxidative stress and inflammation. This is born out of activation of voltage-gated calcium channels, which flood cells with calcium and causes oxidative stress, which can create a situation of inflammation. And we know that inflammation is kind of upstream of many chronic health conditions. Alongside that, there is disruption of melatonin from these non-native EMFs. And that's going to interfere with people's sleep quality. And sleep's another one. We know sleep is fundamentally associated with just about every health outcome you can think of. There's reproductive issues with EMF exposure. So systematic reviews that have looked at decreases in sperm count, motility, quality. This is a real issue. So for those struggling with fertility issues, or those who hope to have a family, really be careful about your EMF exposure. And then finally, we see long-term exposure, and especially among those that are vulnerable, for chronic diseases like cancers, for example. So I think many people don't realize that the World Health Organization has qualified non-native radio frequencies, RF, as a probable carcinogen due to the increase in gliomas that have been studied for many years now. So again, I think you talk to most physicians, they don't realize all of these risks. You talk to most people on the street, they don't realize that putting the phone to their head, or with their child with a device in their lap, or the baby monitor that's right by your child's crib, is emitting these really pernicious radio frequencies.
Back when I had those flip phones, I was kind of late to the smartphone game. I would talk on the phone, and I'd put the phone up to my head right there, and I would talk for maybe half a minute. I get a splitting headache right there. So at the time, I thought that was extremely weird. I never get headaches. So I switched the phone to the other side of my head. This one would gradually fade. I would get a splitting headache 30 seconds later on this side of my head. My body told me directly that it was not a good idea to put a phone up to my head. And that was back in 3G days, before we had 4G and not to mention 5G. I've never put a phone up to my head since then. And I've just been very standoffish about, like, hey, this stuff there's something going on here that's not good for our biology. So I started hearing about EMF protection and just looking for good options. Did not find anything like remotely good. It's some things that were okay, but nothing that remotely had a major effect like Blushield.
Common sense would tell you that the more that we advance this technology, the more conscious that we need to be about protecting ourselves from its effects, while also enjoying the benefits that it can bring to society as well. But I can tell you my real world experience, sort of moving in and out of places, hotels as an example in New York, where the cables, I guess, as I've understood it, in these buildings to protect against rats are better insulated, and noticing with my Oura Ring, which I have been tracking religiously for now years, getting better nights of sleep than in other situations where I'm sitting one story right over top of a router in my own bedroom for many years. So I feel like I have observed in my own real world experience how controlling your environment in that regard can lead to, at the very least, better sleep, recovery, heart rate variability, and by extension, better health and longevity.
Friends that are very EMF sensitive, and so they would talk about their sensitivity, and sometimes it'd be debilitating. Like, they really couldn't even function. They couldn't get sleep. They'd stay up all night, and they'd have to take all these precautions, turning the breakers off, and finding places where it's low as EMF as possible for them to even get some respite. So definitely I was aware of the information that was out there and the danger and harm of it. Little ones, especially newborns, their skull's thinner, they're more sensitive to all environmental stressors, but especially EMF. And so that was really the driving force to ensure that we had something more comprehensive. EMF is a persistent stressor that's inhibiting our body from regenerating and healing on its own. And there's many stressors, there's bad bacteria, fungus, mold, water quality, food quality, air quality, everything. But EMF is becoming a bigger and bigger stressor in our environment, and it's inhibiting our body from its own regenerative capacities.
I guess it was sort of a critical threshold of reading, and just inputs around. This is a concern to pay close attention to, coupled with my experiences on the other end of the continuum with electromagnetic frequency on the PEMF therapeutic devices, and experiencing good health benefits from utilizing this. So I became I think by recognizing that there are frequencies and modalities that can be health promoting helped me to come to the conclusion that that the same phenomenon in different form could be health eroding. And so I sort of arrived at this from both directions.
I'm deeply concerned about the pace that we're going with these technologies. I mean, we hear a lot about 5G and the Internet of Things, where basically you're going to see the little caps on the top of light poles outside, or these types of things. Particularly if you're in cities, that's where it is mostly right now. But the problems are already existing. The 2G, 3G, 4G. This means the generation basically of the technology being used have already, clearly established links with human health risk. So when we start to see more of this, and it's just going to be even more pervasive. Again, it's hard to find non-smart devices these days. It's getting harder to find garage door openers that don't have persistent Bluetooth signals, or again, refrigerators, HVAC, whatever it is. So these are the things that are in houses, that it's getting harder and harder to find that. I get especially concerned with kids. And, when you and I were in school, we didn't have, again, this pervasive radio frequencies all around us with the laptop. Well, they don't call them laptops anymore, strategically, the notebooks they call them now, because they know that these should not be placed on people's laps. And you get the towers on the schools now, and it seems like every kid you go out they got some kind of device in their lap, or they're up to their head. It's concerning. I mean, it really, really is.
I've done a ton of research. I've scoured the science in a major way because I write a lot of articles. I recently wrote an article on the neurocognitive effects of EMFs, and I also wrote an article on the effects of EMFs on blood glucose and insulin. Those were very interesting subjects to research. If you look at more of these balanced studies where there's, you can tell it's more balanced or more objective, there's definitely effect.
People have no idea the contamination field that is being generated by dirty electromagnetic frequencies. And what I mean by that is, dude, if you sit in a Tesla or any really high intensity, electromagnetic induction or whatever they use, for Tesla energy signatures, why it's charging, you're shortening your lifespan. I'm literally not kidding you. That is how dirty that conductivity and that energy and that frequency that's coming out of that. And people have no idea, obviously, Brandon. They go buy Tesla because it's the rage and it's fast and it's 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds and ludicrous speed and all these things. And it's cool to be in these cars. And obviously people think, oh, you're helping the planet. We're going green and all these other things. But when you really start looking at how damaging and harmful these frequencies are to biological life forms, it's insane. I mean, when I tell people that, again, you probably know, right? But very few people understand this kind of stuff.
This is challenging and actually very difficult to do, because sometimes, again, if you live by a cell tower or high voltage power lines, or you have faulty wiring in your house, you really can't get away from these things very well. Maybe you shut the power down at night, but so what you're gonna notice, a lot of these things, it's inconvenient. It's inconvenient to have to wire your house for Ethernet. It's inconvenient to have to be aware of a lot of these devices. It's inconvenient to turn your power off, shut the power off, circuit breaker to your bedroom or wherever it might be. Then you get the shielding strategies. So people will shield with metal-based paints, for example. They'll get shielding fabrics, and I used to do this. I actually had a shielding. I lived in a condominium unit where I could turn my Wi-Fi off at night, but I couldn't turn off the other 20 people that were in the vicinity. So I did some of the shielding, and it's tough. It's again, these things are expensive and they're inconvenient. And they're just a tough sell for a lot of people. If you've got a partner, they may or may not be up for it. I mean, if you're trying to get family to do that, they're probably not going to want to do a lot of these things, which is why we need other strategies, which is one of the things that got me excited about the Blushield study, because that's merely a plug-in unit. You're not having to buy silver canopies for your bed necessarily. So that's some of the limitations, and I think some of the ways that the Blushield can overcome them.
Blushield is a unique and innovative technology originating out of New Zealand that was born of a need to provide a practical and effective solution to the expanding and pernicious wireless signals in the modern environment. Over the years, Blushield built its reputation based on grassroots research and user experiences from around the world. In 2023, Blushield concluded its first independent review board certified clinical trial, making it the first EMF protection product on the market to produce statistically significant data regarding voltage-gated calcium channel gene expression, as well as improvements in composite memory, cognitive flexibility, executive function, and processing speed. Heart rate variability, blood glucose, NK cells, and deep sleep also improved with the use of Blushield technology, according to this research, which clearly shows the connection between these non-native EMFs and the endogenous electrical nature of the nervous system and cells of the human body. Many experts from all walks of life are agreeing that not only is non-native EMF a major health concern, it's getting worse with the expansion of wireless technology.
If I'm not mistaken, it was Matt Blackburn that told me about the Blushield scalar technology back in the day. I got that one over there, the Cube, which is now Jared has inherited because I've upgraded thanks to you and your team, and was living at the time unknowingly under 2 massive cell towers. And I'd been really sick for like 3 years. I had no idea it was from radiation. But I got the Blushield device just because I lived in the middle of the city and just wanted anything that would help with EMF. I just figured there was ambient levels in my house. Installed that thing, meaning plugged it in, that Cube, I think I had it in my bedroom, and then had excruciating headaches and felt like shit for maybe 7-10 days, 2 weeks or something.
I remember all the texts.
You do?
Yeah, like, what's going on? I feel like shit.
What's happening? I thought I'm supposed to feel better. And maybe you can explain, what you told me. But what was interesting is that I felt much better after that initial maybe Herx reaction that I was having. Then a couple months later, discovered these cell towers that I didn't know were there. So it was a really cool placebo-proof kind of, N=1 clinical trial, because what I realized in hindsight was, A, it was the cell towers that was making me sick. B, it was impossible to be placeboed. When I put the Blushield in, I started feeling much better. A lot of my symptoms went away. Then after that, I figured out that it was the cell tower. So from that moment on, I was like 100% sold on the Blushield technology for EMF.
And I was at the last David Wolf conference, like the Longevity Now conference or whatever. And I think it's the last one they've had. And I was just stressed out, kind of just all this negativity around me, just feeling just like vampirically drained, which I literally was. And then Brian Miller walks up to me at the booth and it's like, Hey, have you seen this? And hands it to me. And it's one of the portable devices, I think one of the older models. And I was like, no, I haven't. And he's like, here, hold it. And I held it and I wasn't expecting anything, but within seconds, I felt like an immediate wave of relief over me. And, I was pretty stressed. I was feeling pretty fatigued. I was staying in a hotel. So just bombarded by EMS for the whole weekend. But it was such a tangible experience that stuck with me that after he walked away, I immediately went on my phone and ordered it from your website. I might have ordered, I think, a home and a mobile unit because I couldn't wait. And when I plugged in the Cube, this was at a cabin in Big Bear I was renting. I felt sick for a few days, like I was coming down with like a cold. And just like coughing more, kind of a little congested. And I was not expecting that either. And then it passed, because just did my lemon turmeric or whatever I was doing at the time to clear it out. And just a lot of unexpected results where I was honestly expecting something more subtle, where it'd be just more like an emotional thing, but it ended up being like really physical effects.
Some of you guys who are closer to me and in my inner circle know that I started talking about using the Blushield technology, which is the Cube, in my home once I moved from Mexico to Tampa earlier this year, which is, God, dude, almost now 4 months ago, which is mind blowing, early in June. In fact, I ordered it the day that you guys released it. And it came right away too, which was I'm super grateful for. And truthfully, we're going to get into that technology and how profound it's been for not just me, but my family, my dogs. Like, okay, like I'm seeing this now. Obviously, I understand your technology, and I'm all about protecting myself and whatnot. And I've read all your guys' stuff, and obviously I'm conversant in it. But like seeing it is believing it.
I had owned my Blushield unit for a couple of years prior to having an opportunity to work with Blushield directly, and we got it because we were seeking protection for our little baby girl that we were expecting. My wife was 35 weeks pregnant, and we lived somewhat close to a cell tower, about half a mile at a fire station. So luckily I knew Brandon Amalani, and he introduced Blushield's tech to me, and I'm like, this is perfect fit. It was definitely far more advanced EMF technology than what we had. And so we got that. My wife noticed the difference within a short amount of time. Even with 35 weeks pregnancy, she was going through a lot of different physical changes, but she said she noticed deeper sleep and was more calm. And so I was taken aback by that.
I had been actually looking for a good EMF protection product for a very long time. I've been into a lot of like the health scene for a very, very long time. I knew you guys from way back. I heard about Blushield, and something about it was an interview you did with Mark. It instantly resonated with me. I listened to all the interviews. I just read the website, and there was just something that was just a total yes. So I bought my first auto and plug-in and portable, and it just actually changed my life. Waiting to get it when I was going to visit my sister in her smart house, and we were literally sleeping in a room next to a smart meter. I could not wait to get back home because our Blushield was about to be delivered. And literally got back, and it kind of changed everything. It changed how I experienced driving in the cities, because before that I would get major fatigue, because we live kind of in a rural area, so we had pretty low EMFs in general. But we go into the cities, I get super zapped. I get anxiety, I get nervous system dysregulation, and as soon as we plug in our auto unit and started using our portables, that just stopped happening completely. So it made an instant positive effect.
So bringing Blushield, it stops the body responding to those non-native EMFs, because it's very similar to native EMF or natural EMF from the planet or from the environment in a natural situation. So it's putting out this natural frequencies which are beneficial to the body, so the body starts to respond to that instead of non-native EMF, and then you get a nullifying effect, and it's quite dramatic.
At this point, it's kind of an ocean of feedback that I've gotten, and almost universally people have the more subtle effects of, they feel more calm and relaxed, and maybe some mental clarity, little sharpness there, but they also have deeper, more restful sleep. We hear that almost every day. But some of the more profound effects that I received early on, even from a woman who's decades of challenges with EMF. It started even just from electricity, and then as EMF became more and more pervasive, her symptoms became worse and worse, and she ended up having to move extremely remote in a desert of Arizona. Really couldn't function. Even in the desert, she'd still have her symptoms that were directly related to electricity and EMF, and then she couldn't go to the store, couldn't really do anything other than stay low in the desert. But then somehow, through I think someone from a natural food store in her area recommended Blushield, and she risked it, tried it, and had transformative effects. She got her energy levels back. She was able to go to the store without any negative physiological effects that she would traditionally be taken down from. And so for her, it was amazingly important and literally life-changing. I
talked to hundreds, even thousands of people since I've been working with Blushield, and I don't even always expect these reviews. It's not like people voluntarily submit reviews to the website all the time, and I'm constantly reading those and approving them for the website, and I read those, I'm like, whoa, that's amazing. That's and then I put it away because it's on to the next thing, on to the next email, and it tends to slip out of my mind a lot of the time because I hear it so often, and it's not even like one particular thing that people are reporting over and over again. It's a broad range, and I think it really just depends on the person and how that body, we're so individual. Each person is going to have a completely different experience and completely different benefits. Like, I just remember one recently, just because the last one I heard, a man emailed me saying his wife, they got a Phi-2 plug-in recently, and his wife says she feels like a completely different person, and she said she's been miserable since childhood. So it was her personality became like a miserable person, and she thought that's just who she was. She was a grumpy, miserable person, and she feels like a completely new person. She doesn't even know who she is anymore. Because she feels so good, and just so. I saw that, I was like, whoa, he was just asking a question about something else and happened to mention that on the side. So I hear these things kind of on the side. They're not even direct testimonials, they come with questions about other things, but I hear them on the side so often. I do hear a lot of things about sleep, a lot of things about people just feeling better overall, like being in a better mood, having more energy. We do get the people who feel more fatigue at first, and I explained to them that's completely normal because the body is recovering from this like constant stimulation it's been under for such a long time from this barrage of EMFs. And when you finally stop a bad stimulus, your body has to take some time to just recuperate and recover. And I just really try to tell these people to rest as much as you possibly can. It's like, I hope you have time to get some extra rest because your body probably needs it right now. And I always hear just that they bounce back and they just have a lot more energy after this initial rest period.
Women who had, degenerative eye issues, so it was her eyesight was normal as a youth, and then it gradually got worse. And she, went to lots of doctors, wasn't able to totally pinpoint the causes, but it sounded as though it was a confluence of environmental variables that were causing her degeneration of her sight. And so she could only see about this far, she said. And then she got the Blushield, and her eyesight became more clear. And then after months of exposure, she noticed even greater depth of clarity in her vision. Now she's able to see, not perfectly, she still has a, diminishment of her sight, but it's dramatically better. And so to me, that was like unbelievable. That it's made for EMF protection and mitigation, but it could have these other transformative health effects. Another amazing one from a younger individual, is a college student, noticing extreme inflammation in her joints and tendons to the point where it was, impeding her studies. She was walking on a cane, and I think maybe even had to get wheelchair access, and the pain was so persistent and so painful, like she wouldn't be able to pursue her studies. But then again, someone had referred her Blushield. It was almost like a last-ditch effort. She tried everything else, nothing else was working. And then she got the Blushield, and she did, have some major initial effects, like the pain actually increased in the short term. But we talked it through, and we've had other customers too, where the short term, you might have to pay a little price in the short term for, your body going through the transition process, the adaptation process. But it was only maybe like less than a week that then her pain started to dramatically decrease. And for her, I think it was a 99% a reduction in her pain in her joints and her tendons, and her orthopedic doctor couldn't believe it, right? They tried all the medicines, all the different other, known therapies for her. Nothing was working, but the Blushield alone was the only thing she changed and made a huge effect.
I do hear a lot of anecdotal stuff about the brain function. Actually, I have from my mom. She said that when she has her portable, her dual band portable in the car with her, she feels like her reaction time when she's driving is a lot better. Sometimes if she forgets her portable, she notices it's a noticeable slowing in her reaction time. It's kind of back to that what she was previously a normal level of a reaction time, but now she knows like her new normal is way better, and that's that has major implications when it comes to driving safety. So it's not just like, oh, I feel a little smarter, I feel a little sharper. It's like this stuff is vital for like keeping us safe. Like reaction times are really important. Mental processing speed is very important.
when I analyzed the data, it was clear to me that this was feasible. All 25 participants used the units. And again, that shouldn't be surprising to us because you merely plug it in, as opposed to some of these other strategies that are more challenging to implement on a daily basis. Beyond that, I was excited to see improvements in cognitive function using the CNS vital signs, which is a well-regarded, validated measure of cognitive function. We saw improvements in sleep on the Oura Ring. I'll show you mine right there, where we saw improvements in deep sleep, heart rate variability, heart rate, and body temperature, which was impressive. We saw improvements in self-reported health. So there were some nice improvements there that we saw, but really interestingly is this study also looked at some of the mechanisms underlying some of these potential benefits, including methylation of these voltage-gated calcium channels. And that basically means we looked at a number of them. And there's one that really jumped out, one of these voltage-gated calcium channels, where essentially, after using the Blushield device, this was hypermethylated, meaning it essentially turns off that gene. And all of the ones we looked at trended in that same direction, where they trended towards hypermethylation. In other words, the period before using the device, these genes were activated, suggesting that there was voltage-gated calcium channel activity. And after using the device, this was lowered. So that was really neat because we got human data underlying one of these very far upstream mechanisms when it comes to excessive non-native EMF exposure. That's further upstream, again, than the inflammation oxidative stress, because it's this excessive activation of voltage-gated calcium channels that causes oxidative stress and inflammation. And also worth noting, this was a relatively healthy population. So they didn't have huge needs.
There's two different pathways of the voltage-gated calcium channels. There's the NRF2 pathway, which is the nitric oxide signaling pathway. That results in the therapeutic effects, and that's why there's some devices out there that are therapeutic, like electromagnetic field devices. And then there's this other pathway, that's the peroxynitrite pathway. That's where all of the chronic oxidative stress and then the major, like the cascade from that, which causes DNA damage and then possibly results in other things. More serious conditions down the line. That's where we get from that. And that seems to, in the studies, they seem to show that more long-term exposure, like over a certain period of time, and even in these studies, like several hours versus 2 hours. And that could be even long-term exposure, but we know we're all exposed very long-term exposure, like 24/7. That tends to create that peroxynitrite signaling, which is going to cause the inflammation and oxidative stress. We don't know yet if that's the entire mechanism. I think it's a very big one because the studies seem very clear. Many study reviews that Dr. Martin Pall did, very clear that voltage-gated calcium channels play a major role. They may not be the full picture, but they're involved in every single process in our bodies, especially when it comes to the nervous system and the brain. So anything, especially neurocognitive, we're going to see a lot of voltage-gated calcium channel effects because the brain and nervous system have the highest concentration of those channels in the whole body, and the heart is second to that. So that's kind of makes sense. We see most of the effects we see from the harmful effects from EMFs are going to be neurocognitive and are going to be in the heart. So it does correlate with the voltage-gated calcium channels.
Blushield is not a panacea as such, but it is a major part in your health circle. It's a piece of the pie, but it's quite a large piece of the pie because it's your environment. So you get your environment right first, then the body can heal itself. We have a lot of general practitioners and also homeopaths, etc., using Blushield, and they're finding that in order to get the patient into some kind of healing mode, they need to relieve the environmental stress, and basically they need to give them a Blushield to start with to take away that environmental stress, and then the body has the ability to start healing itself. But before that, without that initial change in environment, the body doesn't have the energy to get over that initial hump to start to heal itself.
EMF is becoming a greater and greater stressor on the body. So once we're able to take that portion out of the equation, our body can regenerate and heal and do what it's designed to do, and can have profound effects by just allowing your body to feel like it'd be in nature, bathed by many different coherent frequencies, and not having to endure the stress from the persistent EMF. It'll replicate what we experience on a forest walk or a beach walk, where there's many different natural frequencies and not just the same ones over and over again.
I think honestly it makes people feel more optimistic and more hopeful and happier in general, because there's this pervasive threat that's kind of enveloping all of us right now. And so much of the time people feel helpless. They feel like they can't remove themselves from it. Even if they choose to use minimal devices on their own, it's like a soup that we're all in. And people can feel helpless, and that helpless feeling makes people angry and makes people bitter and mad at other people. And I feel like Blushield kind of allows people to take more control back. Like they can be okay regardless of all the smart devices people are using, all the Wi-Fi connections they can pick up. Like it's almost like a protective bubble where you can feel safe and happy and taken care of within as we walk through this world of many threats. So I feel like it gives people a sense of security. It's just an overall more positive outlook on life. And I think that's results in a lot of just mood effects and consciousness effects that have major implications.
I've since added the technology to my office. Basically, anywhere I am going to be, it's one. I mean, if you're thinking about health, sort of health promoting tactics in your regimen, this one is, as far as behavior change is concerned, is about as easy as it gets. I mean, you have to muster the motivation to actually buy one, but then you plug it in and forget about it, and it's done. And I mean, it requires no effort whatsoever other than just plugging the darn thing in. So, you can't beat it on the ease of implementation front. And, so at that point, it's just a matter of really, sort of drawing your own conclusion, which is hard to not draw, that this is a concern that every year becomes more and more significant. And I am unaware of a more promising tactic to mitigate that concern than Blushield. I just continue to think you guys are in the right place at the right time with a terrific technology, and it's so effortless. Is it worth a small financial investment one time to have years and years of risk mitigation from something real? I mean, it seems like a pretty easy calculation to me. So, yeah.
I think it's great what you've done first to help raise awareness of this threat to human health. And it's not just humans, it's threats to, we've heard about issues with bees and other aspects of our environment from the pervasive radio frequencies. But you've done a great job raising awareness of this. People need to know about it. And the Blushield product appears to be an encouraging addition to people's repertoire.
Yeah, a lot of people come back to me and say, well, the pot plants outside on my patio are now growing much more vigorously than they did before, and all my house plants inside are just taken off, so that's a testimony as to Blushield's effectiveness. Pets are really chilled out. They're not sort of hyperactive, running around the house going crazy. They bring a Blushield into the environment, they really calm down.
Well, I think honestly one of my favorite thing about more and more Blushields getting out there, personally, I'm a nature lover. I just love to go out in wild nature. I have a special love for plants and trees and wildlife. And this is why I like Blushield's large coverage areas, because it's not just about you. It's not just about you and your little tiny house. It goes beyond your walls, and it goes with you. You're carrying your portable. It goes out in this wide orb, and the wildlife is getting benefits from that. So we have a property that's like a certified wildlife sanctuary area, and our Blushield goes out like 90 meters in all directions. So that's a wide coverage area. That's like almost 600 feet from diameter from one side to the other. So I feel like our we have so much wildlife, and it makes me feel really good. It makes me feel like that I'm doing something really legitimate to help nature. It's not just about helping me and my family. That's the beginning, because my family has to be good. I have to be good to be able to do anything in the world and to be able to help anything else. But just the fact that we're kind of blanketing nature in this protective bubble, it's like, it makes me feel really good.
Blushield is a revolutionary form of EMF protection that produces coherent frequencies within the human responsive range based on mathematical algorithms that mimic nature. It emits specialized energy fields that are imprinted with frequencies using the same power sources as man-made devices, which creates active, powerful fields. It is essentially loud enough to compete against the biologically incoherent non-native EMF fields, so it vastly outperforms the protective devices with weak passive fields that don't use a power source. Instead of attempting to block EMFs, which is ineffective or suboptimal for various reasons, Blushield essentially overpowers non-native EMFs. Blushield emits uniquely created scalar fields, mimicking nature, but much more powerfully.